She's America's favorite missing person. She was a fantastic person, a pioneer in the aviation field, early advocate for women's rights, and a terrific author, by the way. A lot of people know that about her.
There are stories that feel like myths. Stories so strange, so unresolved, so human in their tragedy that they refuse to stay buried, no matter how many decades pass. This is one of those stories.
If you enhance the small little blurry piece that we were looking at, you can make it out to be what could be landing gear of a Lockheed Electra, which she was flying at the time. There's still a chance that she's out there, and we're going to keep looking for her.
We're talking about Amelia Earhart, the most famous missing person in aviation history. And in 2026, researchers are closer than ever to understanding what really happened to her. But here's what makes this story genuinely devastating. The truth that's emerging is not a clean, triumphant solved mystery. It is something far more complicated, something far more human. And honestly, it is so much worse than simply a plane going down in the ocean. Who was Amelia Earhart? To understand why this story still grips us nearly 90 years later, you have to understand exactly who Amelia Earhart was, and what the world lost when she vanished. Amelia Earhart wasn't just a pilot. She was the pilot, the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean, a best-selling author, a Purdue University scholar, a celebrity in the truest sense. Front pages, radio interviews, ticker tape parades. In the 1930s, she carried the kind of cultural weight that very few people in any era ever achieve. She represented possibility in an era that rarely handed women the spotlight. In 1937, she attempted something no woman had ever done: circumnavigate the entire globe by air. She and her navigator, Fred Noonan, had already completed 2/3 of the journey when on July 2, 1937, somewhere over the vast Pacific Ocean near Howland Island, their Lockheed Electra 10E simply vanished. No wreckage, no bodies, no distress signal received loud and clear. Just gone. The U.S. government launched what was, at the time, the most expensive search and rescue operation in American naval history. 16 ships, 62 aircraft, $4 million, roughly $85 million in today's money. And they found absolutely nothing. The official government conclusion, which remains the official conclusion to this day, is that Earhart and Noonan ran out of fuel, failed to locate Howland Island, and the plane went down somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. Case closed, said the government. Except the world never quite let it be closed, and so the theories began. Because what rushed in to fill that silence? A collection of theories so dramatic they almost feel invented. Government conspiracies, Japanese prisoners of war, secret identities. Some of them captivated millions of people for decades. So which ones had even a thread of real evidence, and which ones were pure mythology dressed up as history? The theories that defined a mystery. For nearly 9 decades, 3 major theories have competed for the truth of what happened to Amelia Earhart. Each tells a different story, and each shaped the mystery in a different way. Theory 1. The Japanese spy theory. This one holds that Earhart was actually on a covert U.S. government mission to spy on Japanese military installations in the Pacific. The story goes that she was shot down, captured, held as a prisoner of war, and possibly died in Japanese custody. In the most extreme version of this theory, she eventually returned to the United States and lived out the rest of her life in secret, under the identity of a New Jersey woman named Irene Bolam. It is a genuinely compelling narrative, but historians and serious researchers have found no credible evidence to support it. Japanese wartime records contain no account of her capture. The U.S. government has denied any secret mission consistently across multiple administrations, and Irene Bolam, very much alive, very much a real person with her own documented history, successfully sued the author who put her name to the claim. Theory 2. She survived on a remote island. This is where the story becomes something different entirely, something far more haunting. The idea here is that Earhart and Noonan never plunged into the Pacific at all. Instead, they may have made an emergency landing on a remote coral atoll, survived the initial crash, and waited for a rescue that came too late, or perhaps never found them. The island most associated with this theory is Nikumaroro, then called Gardner Island, a tiny, uninhabited atoll in the central Pacific, roughly 350 miles southeast of Howland Island. In 1940, bones were found there near a campfire, a woman's shoe, a sextant box of the type a navigator would carry. Details that are individually inconclusive, but together impossible to fully set aside. Theory 3, she crashed into the ocean. Straightforward, unambiguous, and officially the government's answer. Ran out of fuel, couldn't find the island. Plane hit the water, end of story. But the weight of official authority behind it has never stopped researchers from probing its edges. And in 2024, one discovery briefly seemed like it might finally settle the question, until the science caught up with the hope. Because in 2024, a sonar image emerged from the ocean floor that sent the research world into a frenzy. It looked to many eyes like the outline of a plane. The dimensions seemed right. The location made sense. So what happened when experts actually examined it? The sonar image, the search, and the brutal honesty of evidence. In 2024, a sonar image surfaced claiming to show what appeared to be the outline of Earhart's Lockheed Electra on the ocean floor near Howland Island. The shape, the rough dimensions, to many people, including some with genuine expertise in aviation history, it looked like it could plausibly be the plane. The discovery sparked enormous public attention that after 87 years of searching, closure was sitting on the ocean floor, waiting to be confirmed. Except, it wasn't a plane. Researchers and geologists who properly examined the image concluded that what the sonar had captured was a natural rock formation. The ocean floor, shaped by geological forces over centuries, had produced something that looked eerily like an aircraft fuselage, but was entirely, definitively natural. No plane. No wreckage, no Amelia. For decades, people have searched for closure on this story. The disappointment of that finding was not just the loss of a lead, it was the loss of a particular kind of hope. The hope that somewhere out there an answer was waiting intact, undisturbed, ready to be retrieved. But the search has not stopped. In November 2025, a research group called the Archaeology Legacy Institute, working in connection with ongoing Earhart investigation efforts, announced an expedition to Nikumaroro to inspect what they called the Taraya object, a specific feature detected on the island that warranted closer examination. Larger excavations were planned for 2026, contingent on what the initial inspection confirmed. The honest account of what followed is this. The expedition ran into significant technical problems. The remotely operated underwater vehicle that was central to the subsurface inspection failed during the mission. On the island itself, the campsite search area yielded largely inconclusive results. No plane parts, no bones, no confirmation that would meaningfully advance the case. With the vehicle failure, that confirmation did not come clearly. No confirmation, no breakthrough, no closure. What 2026 looks like, in truth, is a continued, painstaking search by people who believe the answer is there. If the right technology and location finally align, if the evidence that has been building for 80 years can finally be given the examination it deserves. So if the physical evidence remains elusive, what do we actually know about what went wrong on the morning of July 2nd, 1937? Because the mechanics of how this disaster unfolded are not just tragic, they are maddening in a very specific way. they point to failures that were entirely preventable. The mechanics of a preventable disaster. Earhart and Noonan were trying to land at Howland Island, a sliver of land in the middle of the Pacific, barely 2 miles long. Finding it over open water with 1930s navigation technology is like trying to locate a thumbtack on a football field while moving at 100 miles per hour. The margin for error was essentially zero. Their navigation depended heavily on radio contact, specifically two-way communication with the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca, which had been stationed near Howland Island for the sole purpose of guiding them in. There was a radio frequency mismatch. The Itasca was transmitting on certain frequencies. Earhart's plane was not reliably receiving on those same frequencies. Whether this was a coordination error before departure, a misunderstanding in pre-flight planning, or a technical failure is still debated. But the consequence was catastrophic. Earhart could hear the Itasca's transmissions only intermittently. She could not establish reliable two-way communication. The Itasca, meanwhile, could hear her voice, her urgency, her increasingly desperate calls, but could not reach her with the guidance she needed. "We must be on you, but cannot see you," she transmitted. "Gas is running low." And then, silence. Navigation errors appear to have compounded the crisis further. Noonan, one of the most experienced maritime and aerial navigators of his era, was working with sunline calculations that may have placed them slightly off course. Over the scale of the Pacific, even a small angular error translates into a distance that renders a 2-mile island invisible. Researchers and radio historians have returned to the technical record on this again and again. The frequency coordination failure before departure, preventable, correctable with better pre-flight communication, may have sealed their fate before they ever left New Guinea. So the plane missed Howland Island. Fuel ran critically low. But the Nikumaroro hypothesis asks us to sit with a harder question. What if the story didn't end there? What if they found land and survived and called for help, and the help never came in time? The most haunting possibility of all. This is the part of the story that serious researchers find both most compelling and most devastating. The Nikumaroro hypothesis holds that after losing Howland Island, Earhart and Noonan flew southwest along a line of position Noonan had calculated, a standard navigational fallback when a destination cannot be found. On that southwest line sat Nikumaroro, then called Gardner Island, uninhabited, remote, but with a flat coral reef on its western end that could theoretically serve as an emergency landing surface for a plane running on its last reserves of fuel. The theory holds that they landed, survived for a time, and attempted to call for help. In the days following Earhart's disappearance, multiple radio signals were reported, picked up by amateur radio operators across the Pacific and into the United States, that appeared to originate from her plane's frequency. The U.S. Navy dismissed most of these as hoaxes or atmospheric interference. But researchers who have gone back through those logs believe some signals may have been genuine distress transmissions from a plane still partially above the waterline, antenna intact, with someone alive enough to operate the radio. Then in 1940, British colonial officers visiting Gardner Island found bones near a campfire site, a partial skeleton. Alongside it, a woman's shoe and a sextant box consistent with the type Noonan would have carried. The bones were examined at the time by Dr. D.W. Rainbow, who concluded they most likely belonged to a male of around 5'5". The bones were subsequently lost, misplaced somewhere in the colonial record-keeping of the 1940s Pacific. In 1998, forensic anthropologist Dr. Karen Burns re-examined the original recorded measurements from Dr. Rainbow's 1940 notes. The measurements themselves had survived even though the bones had not, and concluded they were consistent with a tall woman of Northern European descent. A profile, she argued, consistent with Amelia Earhart. Dr. Burns's analysis is not the final word. Other forensic experts have examined her methodology and disputed the conclusion. The bones themselves are gone and cannot be re-examined with modern techniques. This is a contested finding, not a confirmed one. The evidence does not confirm the bones were Earhart. It only leaves the possibility open, but the accumulation of circumstantial detail, the campfire, the woman's shoe, the sextant box, the bones, the reported radio signals, is what keeps serious researchers returning to Nikumaroro decade after decade with better technology and the same unanswered question. Here is the question that reframes everything. If Earhart and Noonan did survive on Nikumaroro, did the search that followed ever give them a real chance of being found? Because the answer is more complicated than most people realize, and more heartbreaking. The tragedy of timing, the narrative that the Navy simply searched in the wrong place and ignored Nikumaroro, is not entirely accurate. The Navy did search Nikumaroro multiple times in the weeks following the disappearance. Aerial surveys were conducted over Gardner Island. It was not overlooked. What researchers now believe, however, is that the timing of those searches may have worked catastrophically against any survivors. The reported radio signals, the ones some researchers believe were genuine distress transmissions, appear to have come in the days immediately after July 2nd, when the plane may still have been partially above the reef at low tide. The antenna, if above water, could have functioned. As the days passed, the tide, the surf, and the coral shelf would have shifted and eventually submerged the aircraft. The signals stopped. By the time search flights passed over Nikumaroro, whoever was there may have retreated deeper into the island's interior, sheltering from the equatorial heat, weakened and invisible from the air. Or the window of survivability may already have been closing. Nikumaroro is not a forgiving place. Fresh water is scarce, dependent on rainfall and coconuts. The heat is relentless and unbroken. Without rescue, the limits of survival in those conditions in 1937 would have come quickly. The painful weight of the evidence points toward this. Amelia Earhart may have been alive after July 2nd, 1937. She may have been signaling. She may have been fighting to be found. And the combination of a failed radio setup before departure, search efforts concentrated on coordinates where she wasn't during the critical early window, and the unforgiving conditions of a remote Pacific atoll may have made rescue impossible. Not because no one tried, but because the errors that preceded her disappearance made being found in time nearly impossible. That is not a conspiracy. That is not a cover-up. That is a cascade of preventable human failures with an irreversible human cost. So where does all of this leave us in 2026? What can the evidence actually tell us, honestly, without overstating or understating, about what happened to Amelia Earhart? And what would it take to finally close this case? What we actually know, and what we still don't. As of 2026, the U.S. government's conclusion has not changed. The official position remains that Earhart and Noonan ran out of fuel, failed to locate Howland Island, and the plane went down in the Pacific Ocean. No confirmed wreckage, no confirmed remains, no newly declassified file that changes the picture. The Archaeology Legacy Institute expedition to inspect the Taraya object on Nikumaroro ran into significant technical problems. The remotely operated underwater vehicle failed completely. On the island itself, the campsite search area yielded largely inconclusive results. No plane parts, no bones, no confirmation that would meaningfully advance the case. The larger excavations that researchers had hoped to conduct in 2026 were contingent on what the initial inspection confirmed. Separately, radio historians and engineers have been conducting meticulous reconstruction work, rebuilding the type of radio equipment Earhart carried and testing signal propagation from Nikumaroro to receivers across the Pacific. Their theoretical modeling supports the idea that distress calls from the island could have been received at the distances recorded in the 1937 logs. That is not proof, but it is consistent with the hypothesis, and it keeps the question open. Here is what the evidence strongly suggests. Earhart and Noonan likely missed Howland Island because of preventable radio and navigation failures. The 2024 sonar image was a natural formation, not wreckage. The Nikumaroro theory remains the strongest alternative to the ocean crash explanation, though it is still unproven. And while the bone evidence remains contested, many researchers believe the most plausible scenario is that Earhart survived the initial landing or crash, only to die later from exposure on a remote Pacific island. That is not sensationalism. That is the honest shape of what the evidence suggests, and if it is true, it means her death was not simply a tragedy. It was a preventable one. A cascade of small, fixable errors, a radio frequency misaligned, a search grid drawn around the wrong coordinates, a window of survivability that closed before anyone looked in the right direction. Amelia Earhart once said, "Adventure is worthwhile in itself." Maybe, but the possibility that she survived the adventure, only to die waiting for a rescue that was searching somewhere else, that is the part that refuses to let go. Not the mystery of where she went, the near miss of how close she may have come to being found. That is the story of 2026. Not a solved mystery, but something rarer and harder, a truth that is finally close enough to see and devastating enough to sit with. If you've stayed with this story all the way to the end, thank you. This one matters more to me than most, because the mystery of Amelia Earhart was never really about a missing plane. It was about how small human errors can lead to irreversible consequences. It was about a woman who was extraordinary enough to attempt something no one had done before, and who deserved a better ending than the one history may have given her. Where do you come down on this? Does the Nikumaroro theory hold up for you, or do you think the ocean claimed them? Leave your thoughts below. I read every one. If this video made you feel something, leave a like. It helps more people find the story. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.